We know how to be nurses, but when we jump out of the hospital, out of the institution, there is an issue with understanding what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
I'm super happy to have Chelsey Brown here with me in Switzerland. She's coming all the way from Canada.
I put my clinic smack dab in the middle of the biggest growing area of Ottawa. As a newer business, everyone around me was my competition, but I call it proximal marketing. Those people might be offering the same services, but they're picking up half the bill for marketing.
And Chelsey Brown is a registered nurse who runs 3 clinics and 18 employees.
We offer relationships. You can't abandon relationships. You can also niche out in terms of injections. There's very successful people doing only lips, only noses.
Right.
Don't be afraid of competition. It is actually helpful. You just don't see it, and we need to be less afraid of what we don't see. The world is big, cosmetic medicine is growing, but we think it's this small pie, and really it's a lot bigger than you think.
If you are an aesthetic injector, a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, or clinic owner, please sit back and relax. But remember, like every treatment, this podcast comes with a risk. You may end up becoming very successful. Welcome, Chelsey Brown.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here in this beautiful country and with your company. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsey. I did some research in advance, and I read one sentence on your Instagram. Leading nurse in cosmetic medicine around the world. What does that mean?
To me, that means leaving all limitations behind. In Canada, I think that we're missing some leadership in cosmetics. It's a very new phenomenon. I think we're a little bit behind in terms of comparing us to the rest of the world. And so when I was driven to find my purpose, as you and I can definitely talk about purpose, I thought that was my job. I started to feel like leading nurses in Canada became my job. It became my job to lead nurses in our clinics. And then I thought, well, if they need leadership, the rest of the country needs leadership. And then I thought, well, if our country needs leadership, the rest of the world needs leadership. And so that's where I feel like I can lead nurses globally. Yes.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Chelsey, how has the role of nurses changed over the last few years? And how many nurses are bumping into this business?
It is growing every day, and I used to instruct, and that's where I started to learn how many nurses were coming into this. And really, in Canada, it's about 50% of injectors are nurses.
50%?
50%, so that's huge.
Huge.
And if you think about in history, at one
10
point...
years ago, it wouldn't be maybe 10%.
Exactly.
Zero.
Exactly. Yeah. It was at one time physicians, dermatologists, plastic surgeons. And so now we're looking at half of injectors, and I'm going to conferences and we're seeing the same numbers. I'm speaking and I'm seeing the same numbers. And so it's growing vastly.
And what has changed within the aesthetic industry? So I presume competition has gone higher. What about quality, and what are the typical challenges nurses are facing once they start getting that or entering into their own business?
Sure. So the history in general, I'll just take a step back. Autonomy has been growing for nurses. So at one point we were considered a sort of physician's, assistant, and that's really changed in Canada. We now have legislation that allows us to do many of the same controlled acts, we call them in Canada. And it's really been through crises in medicine that has forced nurses to come forward. We've filled a lot of the gaps in our medical crises, starting from, hundreds of years ago. And community nursing became a thing where physicians couldn't make their way around to absolutely everybody, and so nurses started to get into the role. And then we started having nurse practitioners doing the same thing. And so now we've really increased our autonomy, and now in the last 10, 20 years, we're seeing cosmetics growing. And so the history is actually quite new in cosmetics, and nurses are jumping in, but there is an issue with understanding what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest change, where we're kind of finding our way. And there's a lot of gray area and a lot of mistakes being made.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the biggest challenges. We know how to be nurses, but when we jump out of the hospital, out of the institution, it's new environment, new walls, and we're stumbling a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the change that I see.
What is the regulations in Canada? Are you allowed to just open your small business as a nurse? What is the precondition you have, or certification or kind of education? And do you need some kind of medical director or someone who's related to you?
Correct. I think that's a question everybody has. I receive messages every single day on Instagram. How do I do what you do?
Yeah.
And the first question is always, are you a medical practitioner? And oftentimes, sometimes they're a teacher and they just want to, so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how do we get here. We have this piece of legislation called the Controlled Acts. It's been around for about 20 years. And they've been growing. So there are specific controlled acts, one of them being breaching the skin using a device, or providing medication using inhalation or ingestion or injection. And so those 14 controlled acts, nurses can do about 7 of them.
Okay.
And so a medical practitioner to me is somebody that can do one of those controlled acts.
14 controlled acts.
14 controlled acts.
Interesting.
Not all of them are directly related to the typical traditional medicine. There's a new one that's actually psychotherapy. Okay. So nurses can also provide psychotherapy, but that does come into our job a lot. But somebody who is educated for that would not be able to do my job. If that makes sense.
So what are the tools you need for being an injector?
Would be the injector. So the one that can breach the skin or breach the orifices of the body. They're all the traditional requirements of a nurse working in any hospital or clinic. And so a physician has all of the same acts and a couple extra ones. So they can provide diagnoses for terminal illnesses or illnesses of any kind, any condition, whereas a nurse can't do that. So as a medical practitioner, we all have some part of those controlled acts. And so a registered practical nurse can provide some of those controlled acts, a registered nurse, a nurse practitioner, and a medical doctor or physician. And all surgeons fall under that as well. Okay. So in order for me to do what I do, I cannot prescribe. So anything below a physician, I shouldn't say below, we all work together, but we are not allowed to prescribe. So we do have a medical director on board. He's fabulous, and he directs all of our nurses. And we work with something called a medical directive, which is different. I don't know what it's exactly like here, but different than a delegation or a direct order or a verbal order. So we work within a set of parameters where we know what we can do, and we meet the patient, and we can work within those parameters that are set out for us based on our training, skill level, and our own personal licensing.
So you independent more or less?
We are independent, and a nurse practitioner can do some prescribing as well. So I'm not a nurse practitioner, so I would need to be teamed up with a medical director who has opened their scope to cosmetics. Not every physician can just go in and inject these things. They have to open their scope. But a nurse is sort of following a directive. So we're carrying out our licensing using these directives.
Is there a lot of interaction between you and the medical director on the daily basis?
Yes, so much, yes. There are support. So if there's any emergencies, the interaction is it's a wonderful relationship, first of all. And we have to meet. So our patients must meet with the medical director first. That's how it works in Canada. Yeah.
Okay. That's a precondition. That's a rule.
Precondition, yes.
So you're probably all in the same building then?
Yes. We are also allowed to do virtual. So as long as the rules are, as long as the medical director can meet the patient for the first time, build that standing relationship, they can direct later to a nurse.
Good.
For a period of time.
But then we today wanted to talk about competition and how to deal with competition. How much are you allowed to structure the business? How much are you allowed to shape your marketing, your branding, your personal branding? Are you totally free and independent?
That has so many complex factors and levels to it. So the business is mine. I'm incorporated. We're not a franchise, so each of our clinics are owned by me. I'm a sole owner. And it was a dream and a vision that I had one day that I was going to do this. Through my story of working through plastic surgery, and I realized that this was a sort of open field, and I saw myself in it, and I went there. Learning how to run a business has been one of the greatest endeavors in my life, but it's been a big passion for me, but it's been a lot of learning. So,
well done,
thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate that. It's just as much of a passion of mine as nursing is. So entrepreneurship is half of me, really.
Cool.
So the independence that I have in marketing is a completely open, wide landscape. That's me. Our branding is me. We work with a branding team, and we've had sessions, and we talk about what do we want to market to people. That is all me. And then we replicate it through all of our staff members. There are no limitations to that except for the medical aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we also have advertising rules, which is widely misunderstood. One of the biggest, largest misunderstood areas of entrepreneurship in cosmetics, I think, in the world, but in particular, I can speak in Canada. I know it's very misunderstood. So in that aspect, we have a lot of rules to follow. Health Canada has rules for us. Our advertising agency, like our Ministry of Advertising, has rules for us. So there I don't have a lot of play, but in terms of our branding and marketing and the face that we have towards the world is all up to me.
Just, you now grew to 3 clinics and probably have invested a lot of money, and you are independent. But on the other hand side, you have a medical director. Legally, you need that one, right? That's one person. So let's assume he jumps on a flight and goes to Fiji and says, I'm off, do whatever you want. Then there is this tricky situation that you invested all the money into your companies, but you dependent on this one person. What would happen then?
This is also a great tip for anybody who's in the same situation, which everyone's in the same situation in Canada. I put this medical director as an employee, not a contractor, which a lot of clinics do that on contract work. So on contract, you can end the contract and you can walk away. This person has a responsibility as well. So do they get paid more? Yes. But as an employee, they have a certain responsibility to the name, to the corporation, which forces them to, obviously they have to sign a contract to give me a certain amount of notice, and also to be able to, take the next steps if that person ever got on a plane to Fiji. Yeah. So I'm so lucky to have this relationship with our medical director. It has been a pillar since day one, and we grew a friendship first. And I have had many opportunities, and I've had people approach me to want to do this role, and it never felt as right as it feels with this person. And so we work on that all the time. We go to dinner, we talk about the future. I'm always looking for this person's buy-in for the future, and we've always been on the same page. And this person has always wanted me to elevate. Mm-hmm. And it's been that, it's been reciprocal. So I want this person's licensing to always be intact. So we have very deep protocols. We're always working on standard operating procedures. I've learned his role. I've gone into his governing bodies and really learned what his role is, so that he always feels so important and not replaceable, even though technically he could be replaced. It's a working relationship that we always need to communicate and be on the same page about. And so I haven't had that issue yet, and we talk about retiring together. So
but so in your case, it's obviously a perfect relationship. But in case it wouldn't be, and nurses would invest a lot into growing a business, and for whatever reason, the medical director steps out.
Exactly.
Would you say it would be general? I mean, if you're not doing well, maybe that's the reason why he steps out, or you don't work with the protocols, have too many complications. But let's assume he will step out because of personal reason or whatever. Would you think a good running medical spa, running by a nurse like you, would always find a new one?
Yes.
Okay. So it's on the
but would it be as great of a relationship? Maybe.
Sure. Of course, but it's just, in case you would be confronted with a situation like this, on first sight, you want to survive with your company. I think that's an important one, right? I wouldn't invest millions in something where I would be related to one person, even though the relationship is the best on the world. Yeah. But you never know. I mean, they could be hit by train, or I don't know. Everything can happen. So I just want to make one point more interested in the fact, would they find someone else? But a well-running business would find someone else, probably.
Yeah, I believe so, because it's the patients are attracted to us for a reason. Yeah. Our staff are attracted to us for a reason. I think it's the same at the very highest levels. But it is a weakness. Like, it is a perfect weakness that is always dwindling and hanging there over your head. But it's one of those things in business that you just must always live with that it's always a possibility.
I'll get you.
But I'll take it a second step, that, moving on in education to do my master's can also include becoming a nurse practitioner. And I decided not to do that. So I could be the prescriber for our clinics. That is a possibility, but I don't want it because the shared responsibility, I think this is where we're going to get into talking about competition. That interdisciplinary approach makes us better. And so I've had a lot of people reach to me when I announced that I was doing my master's and working through this higher level. They're all like, oh, great, you'll be able to prescribe. And I said, no, I don't want it. I'm not going to take that avenue because it works better for me to sleep at night, not having the responsibility of everybody on my shoulders. That shared responsibility makes us equals, even though I own the business, and I think that's really important. And the reality is also that I will need more medical directors in the future. This one person, we are growing. We had 100 new patients at our clinic in July. On top of all of the patients that we already had, we have 100 new ones. So that's a lot for one medical director to manage. And we're going to need, there should be a director, a chief medical director, which I know he'll move into that role, and we will have medical directors.
So you're looking for medical directors because they are the bottleneck. Because all the patients has to run through a medical director.
Exactly.
So that,
They will be the bottleneck. And actually, we've seen that. So that's why we keep hiring new nurses. We don't like people to wait 4 months for their injections. That's not fair, and it's not a good business model. So as we've become more busy, we hire more nurses to fill the rooms.
Yeah.
Then you run out of space. Well, now we're looking for more space. And then the next bottleneck at the top will be when our medical director can no longer take on new patients.
Yeah. Is that the basic concept all over? I can't imagine, because there's so many nurses doing this and so many patients out there. I don't believe
it's common.
Yeah, I think that's something.
I think it's something unique to us.
Chelsey, who is your competition?
My real competition, as an outsider looking in, would be the people who offer the exact same services in the same location that I do. But again, we're all like-minded, and so we don't really see each other as competition. But my competition has changed as well. So as a newer business, competition was everybody. I was a little fish in a big sea. And so everyone around me was my competition, but that has changed.
Why?
Because I have clouded out anything that was a distraction and not looking to anyone any longer for meaning. I now know where I'm going, but I had to...
But that was outside opinions, messages on Instagram. What have you been distracted? Or did you change your entire range of treatments you offer?
No, we've only grown our range of treatments.
Okay.
That's another way, actually, to remain competitive and to not fall to the wayside, is really just to only offer things that you're very confident in. That will grow. So that's for newer people. If you're competing against people who do know more than you, you will sacrifice your business. So stick to the treatments that you do. But you said it, social media. Those people cloud you on social media. You're following them and you think that you should be doing what they do. So that's what I mean by clouding out.
Yeah.
Really, I mean on social media, big time, because otherwise you're not really interacting with them. And the people you are interacting with in person are at networking events, and those people are on your same level.
When I'm discussing or having a chat with other entrepreneurs or visionaries, they would say you probably could scale much more easy if you cut your treatment offer down to, let's say, only lasers. There's a big chain called Laser Away, or only hair transplantation. And I do see examples out there who work like this and they're successful. Would that be something you would consider? Or the problem I see is that we medical professionals, we have done so much trainings and went to so many educational steps that we do not see ourselves in only doing lips or only doing forehead Botox or whatever. Right? We are artists and we want to live what we've learned and want to... So what would you consider? Going broad, accepting that this broad spectrum won't allow you to maybe scale that big, but you compete to maybe many other clinics in the area, or being sharp and focused with 1 or 2 treatments and then rock it?
I think you can be super successful doing any of those. And I think in order to be successful, you just have to match your personality and where you're going with that. So what I mean by that is if you are in love with lasers and you want to niche it into, physics. I love physics. I love lasers and energy and how that can transform the skin. Go and take off with it and cloud out everything else around you. If people are telling you, no, you must focus on neurotoxins and fillers as well. Well, I disagree with that. However, my personality, my success comes from that holistic approach, the same as you. And I think that if you want to maximize the types and people to funnel through your doors, then you have to have many offerings, but you can at the very beginning. And there's a huge movement, natural movement towards being able to offer holistic treatments. Aging doesn't just happen in the skin, and it doesn't just happen in the deep fat, and it doesn't happen in the muscle. It happens in all the levels, including the bone. So for me, if you are an anti-aging or a modern clinic, you kind of have to offer all of these things in conjunction with one another. But you can also niche out. I think there's a lot of people doing very successful, in terms of injections, there's very successful people doing only lips, only noses. Yeah. So I think there's no wrong answer there, but success comes from staying authentic, staying true to you. And whatever that means to you, you can be super successful. I think I could help somebody run a baking pie business and only produce pies. Yeah. Because if that's what that person loves, then that's the key. The key to success is just staying true to yourself. So I'm holistic like you. And so that's why I have to be broad in my offerings.
That's cool. Just a final thought on that. That's the reason we are so big here on one location, because the challenge on being holistic is to have this bunch of people who will all be able to offer, you need one, unless you want to do everything. Right. But we have like experts in rhinoplasty, facelift. We have experts in laser. We have experts in skin treatment and so on. I think it's an amazing idea to have them all together on this one place. And we have a restaurant. We'll enjoy that in a few minutes. So we all together, and we can call each other, can ask each other. We can send patient A to you and patient B to another doctor, so they really can live this holistic approach and in the best interest for the patients.
I agree.
The only thing is, if you have small specialities, like let's say, I don't know, hair transplant, and that's one guy, and there's again the dependency. If that guy leaves, it's sometimes very difficult to find this specific guy. Mm-hmm. While when you're having a dermatology chain, the dermatologist is leaving, you have like easily 5 other applications in this regard. So that's some kind of tricky thing. But
can I digress for 1 second?
Sure, go for it.
I was just thinking about, again, the fishbowl idea, looking back in on my own business, and I'm talking about being holistic, but within my holistic approach, there are specific little pros that do like to do specific things. We have one nurse who loves to do lips. So although we want everybody to be really rounded and diverse, well, it's also okay that one person takes mostly lip patients. Yeah, that's okay too. So there are many ways to do it. There's not one specific approach. And of course, like you said, once that person leaves, is there somebody to fill that void? But again, risks in business always. But I think you can have all of it or just one piece of it and be super successful.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, what I experienced when I was traveling in US or Miami, these small talks, they all talking about these chains coming up. What kind of chains are coming up, and what are they threatening you, or is it maybe disadvantage for them to enter the market with this business approach? What is your thoughts on that?
Again, I have no competition. I don't care how big or monumental these large corporations are. I am my own vision, and at first I thought they were a sort of a threat. But then I realized, once again, who are my patients? They're coming to my brand. And when you have a huge conglomeration, there is this phenomenon of dilution. And people don't want that. Some people do, because that's where they're going to find the Groupons and the discounts and the, 1 week there's this injector and then you come in and you don't get to pick, and the next week it's a different injector. So not everybody wants that. It has not been a threat to my business. It has been an elevator of my business. Okay. So I've watched a lot of my colleagues be purchased out. They, are bought out by these big conglomerations, and then they are a fixture in the clinic, and they are just there to fulfill a role that this conglomeration wants them to, and they're puppeted. And that's the opposite of what we offer. We offer relationships. You can't abandon relationships in our business. You cannot. And so I think that's going to be the biggest juggernaut for them. They have money. They have money backed to purchase all of these clinics and operations, but I don't know that there's huge longevity in it because they will never be as big as the pharmaceutical companies.
I think the trick is to understand medical professionals, and you can't lead medical professionals by financial goals or by okay, Chelsey, let's find out what is the most profitable treatment in your clinic, and then you would say, okay, it's Botox, and then I'm as the clinic owner would say, okay, let's go for Botox only. We advertise, but you would freak out because you would say, listen, I that might be true, but I want to use a filler as well. I want to use my Morpheus. So I think that's one of the big mistakes. And I've seen many chains failing all over the world. I've seen them failing in US, failing some in Australia, some in UK, and also some in our area. I think that the mistake is always the same.
I think it's newer. It's a newer concept where I am, that these chains are just starting to approach within the last couple of years. So maybe it's been going on a little longer in certain areas of the world. But you're absolutely right. You're losing the medical aspect of it. And once you fall away from that authentic thing, that driving force, what people come to you for, what they respect you for, what they feel safe in your chair for, the whole idea has lost the platform. It's diluted. So I don't...
And that's why there never be a competition, I agree.
I agree. They're not competition.
Something could be a competition in some sense of how you could do it right is some kind of concept where the nurses are independent and only get the support they need from one of the companies. You know, if you need support with finances or business advice or admin or whatever, someone could provide it. Got me?
I saw that actually happen once, and I saw that fail also, and they transformed their business into something else. When you have the entrepreneurial spirit, you actually want to guide yourself. You find the right people to answer the questions that you need. So having somebody lead you is only going to go so far. But where we're going is to duplicate what we have. So in a sort of a sense, someday we're already a chain ourselves, but we stay within the walls because we breed our own vision and mission. And as soon as you step outside of that, you're breeding somebody else's mission and vision. And you just have to, a closed door is just as important as an open one. Yeah. And you said it, medicine, stick to medicine. That's why your beauty, our science is our slogan. You can never veer away from either of those things. Science is why we're here. And your beauty is what drives us. We drive each other. It's not one without the other. Competition benefits your business. And I think we get really, really closed-minded. We grow up in worlds and environments where we're automatically taught, not you, obviously, not me, but we'll grow up in an environment that limits themselves. We're taught from day one that we are limited, and I don't have those same beliefs. But competition in your specific area, you have to wrap your mind around the idea that I call it proximal marketing. Those people might be offering the same services, but they're picking up half the bill for marketing. So for example, you talked about a laser device, Morpheus. It became rampant. Everybody wanted it. Well, when somebody is already paying for marketing, they see that it's out there, but they don't want it provided by those people. So they come to you. You did not pay for that marketing. So there's a benefit of proximal marketing or geographical marketing. And big conglomerates like Wendy's and McDonald's, they sort of do the same thing. You'll see them on the same block, not side by side, but you'll see them on the same block because you want a French fry. But I really like a McDonald's French fry over a Wendy's French fry.
Aldi, Lidl, the same. They're always the same place.
Yeah, exactly. They're together. And so they have this proximal marketing. They probably spend half the amount of marketing because everyone knows what a French fry is. And it's the same with laser hair removal. Everyone eventually now knows what it is. And when you market it, they want to come to you for it. So there's that proximal marketing. Where it gets tricky is so I'm very lucky to be, seen on this elevated stage where I am and where we practice, that companies come to us sometimes to launch things. They come and they say, you'll be the first to market in this area. We have this great device. It's doing really well across the world. We want you to be the first in your city. So that's amazing. We have no competition for that specific device, and we have one in particular. And what I found was that with no competition, we picked up the bill for all of the marketing. Nobody knew what it was.
Sure.
So we had to lead that. We had to put dollars behind it. We had to be okay. If we're going to have this, it's going to be us, and others will actually benefit from our marketing because we set the stage. We're going to buy it, and then the next clinic down the road is also going to buy it. And they're going to piggyback on our marketing. So being the first is great. It means you've reached a certain level of success. It means you have no competition. You are the first, but it also means you have more upfront. And so don't be afraid of competition. It is actually helpful. You just don't see it. And we need to be less afraid of what we don't see. The world is big. The pharmaceutical, cosmetic medicine is growing in numbers we don't even know. But we think it's this small pie. And really, it's a lot bigger than you think. So competition is not a traditional definition when it comes to cosmetic medicine.
Yeah, I was growing up. I started as a derm with a single practice, and I was growing, and I was driven by brilliance and quality, and maybe you can see that once you walk through the clinic and the restaurant, and I have this clear vision, I have this clear concept how I treat my patients, and I was always booked out, mostly far in advance. And I always was some kind of, maybe let's say arrogant, always said, I don't have competition. Just don't have competition, because as long as I'm doing my job well, I'm doing that at this level, there is no competition. But I'm aware that that is maybe my personality, and I'm a very humble person, don't worry. Yes, you are. But I think I believe so much in quality and in precision and going the extra mile that I'm not fearing. I wouldn't fear opening up a bakery somewhere in the world. I would first go to every great bakery in the area, would learn how to bake croissants, and I would go to Italy and learn how to bake a perfect pizza. Then I would go back to, I don't know, Brooklyn, and would open my bakery and would deliver the best croissants, the best pizzas, the best focaccia in this area, and it would work. It's how I am. But what is your view on that? I know, because I'm in exchange with many nurses as well. They write me and they ask me these questions, and they say, what about discounting? What about prices? I have this one at the corner who's now discounting. Should I do the same? Now, let me know what you think about competition and how to deal with that.
Okay, I just want to unpack everything you said.
Put it in steps.
Yes. Well, first of all, the first time I met you, I was there to listen to you talk, Miami. And one of the questions I wrote down for you was, do you think success is purely a personality trait? Because Felix, I think you could put your mind to anything and do it perfectly. And then I said, so could I. So we are the same in that way. So I already agree with you that there's that part of you that is just, you got into a point in your life that you were limitless, and maybe you weren't always, but your personality grows as you age. And I think that we have the same view there. Mm-hmm. So I also don't feel I have competition. However, it exists, and I need to acknowledge it constantly all the time. And I get the same questions, and I see the same things. So my take, first of all, also on the discounting, well, I don't believe in that at all, because you're discounting yourself. And if you automatically know what you have to offer, there's no need to discount it. People will come and they will be attracted to you, and they will go to somebody else for a different reason. So that's not really competition.
And there's a second very, very important aspect. It's a spiral down. Once you start discounting, people wait for the next round of discount, or they come for the next round. Last time I got this price, why didn't I want to charge $200? If you start going through this, that is a very interesting topic, and you should ask yourself, or the listeners should ask yourself, why is Chanel, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, they rather burn their stuff by end of season than selling it for a discount?
Yes. I'm on board.
Think of that.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. It's we don't give ourselves enough credit. There's a lot of psychology that goes into this idea of competition. And there's also legal aspects. You actually, in Canada, you cannot discount a pharmaceutical. So
yes,
neurotoxin is a pharmaceutical.
Yes.
So the second you discount it, you're going against the rules that we have in our country. And so And fillers are a medical device and they fall under the same category. I don't believe in discounting. You've gotten this far. I've spent the last 15, 20 years of my life getting to where I am today. And discounting means all of that means less than what it is. And it's actually a lot. I've done a lot to get here. There are companies that come to mind. I won't plug them. Of course, we can use Chanel as the one side of the spectrum where they don't discount. And I have lots of Chanel and I have lots of all of these things and I pay the full price for it and never once have ever thought about needing a discount for it. And then there are other companies who they've reached their demise based on doing quarterly discounts. And they've gone from this luxury brand, like you said, down to the spiral to people only purchasing during their discounted events. And that is a corruption of your entire business. So don't do that. And also, it's also part of competition. It creates that competition to these new people coming in, and it doesn't set the standard well for them either. So we're here. We've been around for a little bit. You've been in the business longer than I have, but we are setting the stage for the trajectory of the future. And if we set that stage, everybody will come and do the same thing. And who's losing? It's not the pharmaceutical companies. They set the price and they're firm on it, and they can be. They're massive corporate bodies. We're the gatekeeper there. And so we have to stand strong. I don't think discounting is a good idea at all.
So what is the solution? How can I stand out? What do you think is the solution?
You must be confident in what you offer at every given moment and breath, including, so for example, we have this sort of thing where our new nurses, they come in and they sort of get up into the ranks, they get comfortable, they must do some shadowing with me. So I go in with my patients and they must listen to the verbiage. What do I say to these people? And there's always an opportunity where a patient comes in, and most of them don't. Our marketing is very good, and we have people who come and do not ask for any discounts. That's already set the stage on your marketing. So make sure your marketing is intact, because if you give the illusion that the perception that you give discounting or that you're not worth it on marketing, in your marketing or social media, then when they walk in the door, they don't expect it.
That's economical behavior. It's very interesting. Sorry for interrupting, but what I discovered, my first clinic was just a regular medical clinic. Nicely, well done, clean, everything good. But I was faced with discount requests all the day. Can I have this? Can I, I don't have the money. Blah, blah, blah. Do you have a payment plan? And it was really annoying. Then we built this building here, Skimit Lensburg, with an entire interior design concept, with a room fragrance, with music, with a dress code, with tiny chocolates, coffee, water, own magazine, all the stuff. Great lights and every detail was worked out. Flowers, guess how many discount requests? It's more or 0. Because people are coming in here and they know this is not the place to ask for a discount.
That's right.
Right.
So you're setting the stage for them.
Yeah.
And you're also setting the stage for your employees, right? So if you're not confident in that, anybody coming in under you will not be confident in that. And so that's part of why they shadow me. They need to listen to that and that confidence. So those opportunities are there.
But that's your nurses. They're lucky to work with you. What is with the mindset you should have, the understanding of the entire thing?
Well,
I will share my vision, but
when you're navigating and you don't know, you emulate. So you look at those people, what they're doing, and you emulate it as best you can. That's what would be the advice I would give to newcomers coming in.
I would say, think of branding. Companies have a branding, but you as a person can have a branding. I'll give you a story. Imagine, the company Nike. Nike has a very clear why. I think it's we inspire athletes all over the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. Goosebumps, very cool. I would have a very clear vision of a hotel which Nike would build, or Apple. I have a vision how that looks like.
Right.
Do you have a vision of a sneaker would built by Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott? I know, no clue. It's all the same. It's a logo. Nike is a brand, while Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott is just a logo. And what happens? They sort it by price. People go to booking.com and get the cheapest price. Do you care if you sleep at Hyatt, Hilton, or Marriott, or I don't know what, Mercury? Almost the same. I go to booking.com, find the one who's closest to my conference or whatever, and then the price. But I wouldn't, Nike, the quality of shoes Nike's offering, you can probably find somewhere online for like $40, but I'm spending $190 on this because I'm willing to pry the extra price above the substitute, because I see myself related to the brand, and I want to show the world that I'm related to this brand. I love the more Apple computer. If I'm sitting in the Starbucks to express myself, who I am, I want this Apple logo being shown and not just some kind of Hewlett-Packard thing. So I think that it's really the branding, and every person is a brand and can sharpen their style. I would talk about that in a circle, and that's why we have these purpose workshops and these moments of reflecting who we are, because I think once we have understood our why and our strength and our weaknesses, we can make that to our superpower in our personal branding, and think that's the secret in the end.
Absolutely.
And then you find your group of fans and group of patients coming into the clinic.
It's the finding, because when you first start out, I don't think you really know. So I sat down to open my business, and I went through my mission, my vision, my values. That's what you're supposed to do, right? When you open a company, you should know all of these. Well, they all changed because you grow into things. And so I don't know that somebody coming into it, anybody newer, would know exactly what that is until they find themselves in this field. And I think Nike probably went through similar transformation. Apple went through a similar transformation. They do go back to specific people. And my brand comes back to a specific person as well. I actually do have a personal brand, but our company brand is Your Beauty, Our Science. That's our logo. And we very much stick to that. We are evidence-based. We go back to our medical roots, our nursing roots, and that's the tree from which all the branches grow.
That's your why.
That's my why.
And that's what people guide you, what makes people following you, not only patients, also entrepreneurs, right? If you would have a why saying we are always the cheapest, right? You would probably find injectors, but not the ones you're attracting now.
Right.
You clearly claimed with your branding that everything is related to quality and evidence-based medicine, and that helps patients as well as employees to find the right place.
So to the listeners, when you find that and you know it and you live it and you breathe it and you know that's your why, don't ever stray from it. Stick to it. Cloud out everything around you. That's easier said than done. But once you do that, everything feels easier.
Yeah, I agree with that. Your design might change over years because your feelings change. You get old and more mature. If you see our first Skin Mid logo, it's very different to the ones we have today.
Yes.
But the basic idea, the basic vision always was the same.
Yes.
Now I agree on that.
And get out of your own competitive way.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I've had so many transformations. Our original slogan was changing the standard for cosmetic medicine. And we are doing that. But how are we doing that? Through science and through your beauty and through empowering people. And that's why our new slogan is there. But I was so attached to what we were doing before. Then we hired a chief operating officer, and she came in and she said, you know what, we need to do a rebrand. And I said, but everything's perfect. Our logo is perfect. Our slogan is perfect. What we're doing is perfect. No, you don't need to change who you are and what you're doing, but the image of it has transformed. And so since having her on and her magnificent brain, all of that has become so much more clear. And you have to do that as you're growing. If you don't, you're always going to stay where you are, which is okay if that's what you want.
Absolutely.
But it does transform.
Coming back to competition, now sharpening your why in your brand is one part. Having good training skills, injection skills, all good. But when you do this step of entering into your own business, would you do some kind of analysis of the area, not only in regards how many competitors are there, so should I avoid this area? And the second one, which I think is important, in which area does my personality fit, right? If you are this super glamorous, busy girl and love being dressed and love being extrovert, you might fit into a special area where you attract much more patients than going into the countryside or in the very conservative more area or whatever. No, so I was thinking about this a lot, and thinking, am I fitting into this area? Am I related to the people who are living here? What do you think about that?
I think this goes back to the original chat that we had about, and maybe it sounds arrogant, but I actually think that people start to transform and fit to me. And my story is that when I was starting my business, I actually did an analysis. I was actually new in the capital. I had really just moved there within the year. And so I didn't know many people, and I didn't know a lot about the city. I just did...
That was Ottawa.
Ottawa. Yeah, I actually grew up in a very small town in northern Ontario in the same province. But I did an analysis of where are all the people. So again, cosmetics is quite new in Canada, in my opinion, in terms of the landscape of how far we've come since, neuromodulators have been created. And I put my clinic smack dab in the middle of the biggest growing area of Ottawa. And I learned a lot from that. So through my branding, I think people started to become attracted to me. Now, I live in a city of 1 million people. There are many larger cities. There wasn't a lot of competition. So I do think you do need to do a scan. But then once you do that, I actually have a step further that I went. And that was actually to remove all of it. So that's where the competition in terms of your situation comes into play. It was getting into my head. I looked around. I was following all these people in my area. It was newer. There was lots of nurses flooding in. I knew where I was going. None of it fit. And every time I would look at the landscape on social media, or sometimes representatives from pharmaceutical companies would come in and they would say, "Oh, okay, you're new here. Do you know your competition?" And I would say, "Well, yeah, I know of this clinic and this clinic. And oh, do you know of these?" And I'm like, you know what? I don't mean to be rude, but I don't really care. None of them have what I have. And so I unfollow everyone around me. And I got so clear on what I was doing. So that's an actionable step that I think people can do. You get really wrapped up in what's immediately around you, and it actually doesn't matter. Follow people where you want to go.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're not in your proximity at all. Oftentimes they're people around the world. And that's another aspect of leading nurses globally. So you do analysis, but then you go through a transformation, I think, where you have to worry about
don't have collaborations with these clinics, so you just do your thing.
We have friendliness. I think once I did that, all of the sort of people who also saw me as competitors completely fell off. And then all of the people who saw me as an ally, who were doing things similarly, were all in it for what's the next step? What's the growth? How are we serving patients? How are we serving our community? Those people started coming to me. And so we have, I'm sure you agree, but there's levels of clinics and people with the same ideas and marketing. Finally, they find each other, even if it's across the world. It's the same in your city. So I stopped looking there and started to really surround myself with the people who are on the same level. And those people think the same way. They don't see me as a competitor. They see me as Nurse Chelsey over in Barhaven. And if you live closer to there, go see her. She has these devices I don't have, and vice versa. Yeah. So it's healthy.
Yeah, healthier. Absolutely. We do the same. One question. There's one challenge to enter into being self-employed, having your own small business. But then there's another story to open up a second or third clinic. What is the right time to do that? How would you see that?
Well, the 2 clinics that I opened in addition to our headquarters were for reasons you probably would never imagine. One, I moved away from my hometown, and then I was able to look back at a very different lens into my hometown. I left because I'd reached the ceiling of growth. And then looking back, I realized that what I do in my new city is missing from my hometown. So a lot less population, but that clinic is booming. And so that was out of necessity. I actually sat down with a business consultant, and I had these 2 clinics. I was traveling back and forth, which was helpful in the beginning, but it's not helpful anymore. So we're not really doing that anymore.
That's my recommendation as well, because you are the bottleneck and you shouldn't.
Absolutely. And so we have, more of me who we are recreating. But it was out of this golden egg. I keep calling it the golden egg. So I wanted to ramp up our headquarters. And I sat down with a business consultant and she looked at my numbers and she said, you want to what? You want to ramp up this clinic and abandon this one in your hometown? Look at the numbers. That would be stupid, and I'll stop working for you if you close that clinic or you try to, put your attention here. It riled me because I thought I had it clear. We'll go to the big city, we open a big clinic, but this hometown clinic was going crazy. And so I looked at it from a different perspective from then on, and I thought it's out of necessity. It's because I want to grow. I want to grow our revenue, and it's right there. It's low-hanging fruit. And forgive anybody who's listening from my hometown, but I don't mean to demean that in any way, but they were all traveling to the big city 4 hours away to get their injections. And so we brought the big city clinic there, and that's been a huge success for us. The third clinic...
How far is the distance?
It's about 3.5-hour drive. Kilometer-wise, it's like 300.
And who's checking on the second clinic?
So we have our executive team in Ottawa. So myself, our COO, and our CMO, our medical director. And then under them, we have managers. And we're constantly looking.
But you all have to pay for them, right? So it's one of the regular questions I get, who to employ first. And I employed first a few injectors to have some kind of foundation, financial cash flow foundation to then have. I always had a PA and a patient coordinator, but once we get to the level of having COO, HR, and all this, it took a while.
You're right.
So you the other way around, you first set up the...
No, actually, I did say that backwards. I'm missing our beautiful our team of injectors. We did grow that first.
Yeah.
And a couple of them sort of rose up to the occasion. They've taken on more managerial roles. Then when I brought on that was later that I brought on the executive team, and they cleaned it.
Yeah.
Cleaned it up, and they streamlined it, and we're continuously looking at streamlining it, because without that, you're not scaling, right? Without automatic processes, you're not scaling, and that's so I did it in the exact same order, but I just missed that step.
Okay.
So that was one of the eye-opening experiences, was that I needed boots on the ground. I cannot be traveling back and forth to this clinic, and so that's what we did. We put those boots on the ground, and we stopped the travel in between, except for visiting and openings and events and stuff, trainings. That was one of that. Was just out of necessity. The numbers showed it. There was a moment of opportunity to do that. The third clinic, we actually had one of our stars from that smaller clinic get relocated. Her husband or fiance got a job in this other area. And we had a plan to have a third clinic, a third stream of revenue within the year. And it just fell in my lap. I think you have to be totally open to the opportunities in front of you and see them as an open door or closed door. They're all important. And so I didn't want to lose her. She was a star, and she was growing this massive clientele, and she's an excellent nurse. She holds all of our values that we have in all of our statements and our mission, vision, values. Excellent. And I just didn't want to lose her. And so we did another analysis of the area she was moving to, which is on the coast of one of the Great Lakes in Canada, a very luxurious community. They make great money. And again, out of necessity, they don't have a clinic like ours. Those people were also traveling to Toronto constantly to get their injections. They just didn't have anything. So we're fill the gap again. And so we opened in June that clinic, and she's moved over there. And now we have a reception there. And it's like a growing vine of the same thing over and over again.
How do you handle the situation that a medical director has to see all the patients? So you have separate medical directors?
That's where we do the virtual.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Virtual consultation.
Yes.
Perfect. What numbers are new patients in your clinic, and what is the retaining rate of patients?
That's a really good question. Our COO has the specific numbers on that. I know our retention rate is high, and it's actually getting higher because we are niching down on our perfect marketing. So people are coming to us that are connected to us, and we have a certain percentage of people that will go test the waters elsewhere, and they'll come back on their knees and say, I've had this crazy experience. And and now we want you. And I'm sorry I ever cheated on your clinic, but we're back and we're here to stay. And the strength in that relationship is incredible. We have a very high retention rate. I do know that. But we also have a very high new patient rate, and it's because of our growth. We've had incredible growth in the last 16 months that has been insane. So we also have a very high, so when you're growing, it's harder to have a crazy ratio of new to returning, but we do have a very high retention rate. And it's because of that. It's because of our very niche marketing. We're good at it.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Last week before I came, I had patients, a couple come from New Caledonia, which is off the coast of Australia. Mm-hmm. They travel the world for their injections. They just happen to be travelers and their jobs take them places. They've been everywhere, from Berlin to Dubai to Russia, everywhere for their injections. And they came to Ottawa. They were there for vacation and they asked their friends, where do we go? Well, you must go to the Cosmetic Clinic. We've heard really great things. We know so many people that go there. And when they left, they said, without a doubt, this was the best experience I've ever experienced around the world. It was the least painful, which below that part blew my mind. The results were exceptional and the care was exceptional.
Cool.
And so it doesn't matter where you are, your competition is everywhere, but if you know what you offer,
absolutely,
you can have patients from around the world.
Absolutely.
And so their retention rate will also be high. They will be back. They said, we'll be planning our injections around our trips to Canada.
That's cool. Good. What are your next steps, Chelsey, though?
Our next steps are to move our headquarters into a place like this. That's something that we're working on currently. I want to create more of those vines like I talked about. So we're at this level where we now know what scaling is. We have dropped the competition and the idea of competition. We are the cosmetic clinic and there is nothing like us. And we are on a roll to open up our academy for people to come and listen and learn from us in the same way that you have sort of done here.
Great. So a lot of exciting things ahead of you.
Exciting things.
You will have my support all the time.
Oh, thank you so much.
One last question. There's so much to talk about, and we have to set up a second one about patient relationship, how to set up, how can you standardize this a little bit that others understand it as well? How can you teach us? However, we do another one. But my last question for today is, how does the aesthetic world, the aesthetic industry look like in 20 to 30 years? What is different to today?
What is different? Well, I think there's the unknown. And every now and again, a revolution happens in our industry, all medicine. And I think we'll stumble upon another revolution. I think neuromodulators or the branding Botox was one of them. It changed the game. And I think we'll see another one of those.
Which one?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think regenerative medicine is taking the cake. It's starting to. And that brings me to the next point, that we'll have a revolution, but really what we'll see in 20 to 30 years is the growth of what we're doing today. And that's why leadership is so important today, because we are setting the stage for the next step. And what we're doing today will have its fruit in 20 to 30 years. And that's my place. That's your place. You're a leader as well. And having these inner circles and these meetings and podcasts, we are setting the trajectory. So we will have an elevated cosmetic medical industry because of what we're doing today, the same way our leaders and sort of ancestors in cosmetic medicine have brought us to where we are today. They will pass the baton and to us, and we'll bring it to the next step. So I think it will be even greater than what it is today. There will be more leadership. There'll be more guidance. The gray areas I was talking about will be reduced. Yeah.
I think that's something I realize. People looking for guidance, people looking for people who has done the journey or however give some kind of confidence in their life and in their business. So I agree with that on you.
Yeah.
You're probably one of them.
Just a drop in the bucket. Someone once said to me that a bucket is filled by many drops. And so all these people coming together will fill the bucket.
Good.
Yeah. You're a drop in the bucket. A big drop to you.
Thank you so much, Chelsey.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It was really good conversation. Thank you.
It was.
Thank you for listening to the Aesthetics and Biz podcast. My guest was Chelsey Brown from Ottawa, Canada. I love this podcast so much because we talked about competition and why we don't have to fear competition. We talked about marketing, we talked about growth, we talked about mindset and many more. Don't miss this episode. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or any other channel you listen to this podcast. Thank you so much.